All right, welcome everybody to today's webinar. Today we're talking about CAD to part with XiP in 30 minutes or less. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do a live demo of Nexa 3D's ultra-fast professional desktop 3D printer. So hope you brought your popcorn. And my name's Sean. I'm the head of content at Nexa 3D, and I'm joined by the wonderful Jasmine Heer. How's it going, Jasmine?
Hi, everyone. It's going great. It's going to be a pleasure to walk you guys through this. I'm excited.
Sweet. So Jasmine, before I give a little company intro, I do want to ask you about yourself. So you are you're an engineer in our next factory. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what the next factory is and what you do?
So the next factory is part of Nexa, where pretty much we work with customers. So if you guys were talking with the sales rep and you guys were interested in looking at some of the parts on our printers, we pretty much would send you some samples. You can also send us your STL files, and we would pretty much go through the entire workflow and show you what it would look like to have your parts printed on our printers, to give you an idea of what it would look like for you to have the printer. And so that's pretty much what we do at the next factory.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you guys are interested or potentially getting a Nexa 3D printer, you can get a conversation going with one of our sales reps, and then work with them to get your parts printed and figure out if the materials and the process is a good fit for you. So definitely an awesome part of the Nexa 3D organization. All right, so I am going to tell you all a little bit about Nexa 3D for those who don't already know. So we like to say at Nexa 3D, we are building a sustainable digital supply chain through additive manufacturing. So when you think of today's supply chains, people always talk about what a mess they are, how they're broken, takes weeks, months to get supplies, and so that's kind of our mission to basically make manufacturing more accessible to all different kinds of companies in a local sense. So whether it's within your company or through a service provider that's within your town or your city, you can get real production grade parts fast, and you can get them on demand, really. So instead of maybe ordering thousands of parts, putting them in storage somewhere, keeping them in supply, or in a warehouse, you could actually keep them on your computer, on your servers, have your printers print the parts as you need them. Maybe you print one, maybe you print 20 at a time, maybe you print 100 at a time, I don't know. But the idea is it's creating this more sustainable supply chain where products are manufactured locally and closer to where the assembly is happening, and the digital supply chain part of that too, where you're kind of not using a bunch of space for storage. You're actually just using your a digital warehouse, if you will. So speaking of that, we have a whole range of 3D printers. As you can see on the screen here, we've got our XiP, of course, which Jasmine's going to be doing an excellent demo of today. And that actually stems from the printer that's just to the left of that. That's the NX series. So the NXE 400 Pro is kind of the newest and biggest version of that. And that is our industrial resin 3D printer. So that's kind of where the LSPc, our proprietary high-speed, ultra-fast 3D printing came from, and that's kind of made its way to XiP, which is what we're demoing today. And then to the right, we also have a new line of SLS powder bed options too, that are also the highest throughput now available in the market, and that's called the QLS 820. But we're going to focus, like I've said twice already, on XiP. All of our products, it's worth noting, are designed and manufactured where Jasmine is right now, in our headquarters in Ventura, California. So locally manufactured for all of our US residents, or US attendees, I should say. And our products, they're used by a diverse group of customers with a common need for speed, right? So these people recognize that, 3D printing is actually, while it's great for one-off parts and flexibility, it's not always the fastest process. Like sometimes you can do a large print for up to a week long and wait for that print. With our printers, that can be fast forwarded to like a day, or for smaller prints, minutes. You're going to see a print today, I think, in about 13 minutes. So it's pretty cool. And our customers, you can see the logos on the screen, but, from automotive to furniture companies, sporting goods, government agencies, and service bureaus, consumer goods. We've got a wide range of customers. So actually, before I forget, I'm going to throw a quick poll up on the screen. So I'm going to ask you, the audience, to take a second to answer this: which best describes you? So 1, you are interested in getting your first 3D printer. 2, you already have a 3D printer, but you could possibly use an upgrade or an addition. I know that's a loaded question because we could all use an upgrade and an addition. So I expect that one to be the highest. 3, I already have all the 3D printers I need, I'm all set. Or 4, I'm just curious about 3D printing technology, but don't really have an application for it. So I'll give you guys 5 more seconds to answer that, and then I'll flash that results up on the screen in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cool. All right. So, yep, just like I guessed, everybody can always use an upgrade or another. So that's why, that's what we're here for today. And, we'll try to help you figure out if XiP could be that next upgrade 3D printer. So, all right. Oops. All right. So for today's agenda, we are going to, 1, start a print. Jasmine's going to start a print. She's going to import a CAD file into NexaX, our software, set up the print using NexaX, export and start the print using a USB thumb drive. Then once that print is off and running, it should be a pretty quick print, but we're going to start diving into the features of XiP, and we'll see how far we get before that print finishes. So I think Jasmine will, go back into NexaX, go through what you're going to see there and get you familiarized with that software and all the features that it has to offer. And then we are going to go through some of the top features of XiP that make it unique in the desktop realm. And then, of course, somewhere either at the end of that or in the middle of there, whenever that print ends, we may not cut away, but Jasmine may step over there, pull the print out, make sure it came out and everything, show you guys the result, and we'll stop the stopwatch, so to speak, see how long it took. And then we'll finish our spiel. And lastly, we will get into our Q&A. So I will be taking questions throughout, and maybe I'll be lobbing some at Jasmine while she's doing the demo to keep her on her toes. And if we don't get to some of those at that point, we will definitely get to more at the end. So be sure and drop those questions as you think of them into the chat, into the Q&A. And while we're doing intros, let us know where you are tuning in from. Always good to see. I see somebody from Regina's from Saskatchewan, for example. Good morning, Regina. All right. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will turn the mic over to Jasmine and let her get started with the print.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Sean, for that amazing introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by sharing my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to start off with the first part of our little webinar today, which is the CAD. So one of the best parts about 3D printing is it's super ideal for prototyping. You can do multiple iterations and you can go ahead and change your design as needed. And one of the best parts about our printers is they're extremely fast. So when you need to do multiple iterations, you could get majority of them out within the same day or the same couple days, make whatever changes you need and get to your final part even faster. So over here, I already have a CAD file pulled up. I have this little three-way connector that I'm going to be printing out today. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to be using Autodesk Fusion 360, but you're more than welcome to use whatever CAD software you guys have, such as SolidWorks or Inventor. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my Mesh tab right here. And there's this little 3D prints option in Fusion 360 where I can export my model. So I'm going to go ahead, click on it, and I'm going to click on my part right here to export it. And I want to export it as an STL binary. This is the file that's most easiest read by a 3D printer. So once I have that all set up, I'm just going to go ahead and click OK, and it's going to prompt me to go ahead and save my file. So I'm just going to save it as a three-way connector. Just like that, I have my STL file from my CAD software ready to go into our software, which I'm going to open up right here, NexaX. So this is our proprietary software that works with our printers. I'm just going to very briefly go over it in the beginning, just to show you what it's going to be like for me to get a print set up and started. And then once I start the prints, I'll go ahead and come back and do a deeper dive into it. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off by selecting the printer that I want. So I'm going to be using the ZIP. And I also have a list of materials, and I'm going to be using X45 Natural today. These are the only two changes I want to make for now. Oh, I actually also want to enable adaptive speed control. And I'll go ahead and go into depth about what that is in a later step. So I'm going to go ahead and apply all of my settings, and it's going to take me over here to my build platform. From here, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and use the tools on the sidebar. So the first tool I'm going to use is this one right here, import. So I'm just going to go ahead and select import model, and it's going to pull up all my STL files that I have saved from Fusion 360. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on that three-way connector that we saved earlier today. So you could see that my part is a lot larger than it's supposed to be, and it's most likely because I exported it as a different unit. So we actually have these options right here in our transform tool, where we could switch from millimeters to inches or inches to millimeters. And since I went ahead and accidentally exported this in the wrong units, we also have a scale tool. So I can go ahead and scale this down to whatever size that I need. We also have a scale option right here. So if you want a certain percentage of your part to be scaled down, you can also use this option right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and right now estimate the size simply because of how I exported it. And let's go ahead and do about 15% of its original size. So now that I have my part the size that I want it to be, I could go ahead, click on it, and I have these tools right here on the side that I'm going to go ahead and use to move my part around. I can also rotate it if I wanted to in the XY direction and see. And I want to print out a couple of these. So we also have this little tool right down here called duplicate. And so if I do that, I could go ahead and make multiple copies of my three-way connector right here. So I'm just going to print out about 5 of them for now. So I'm able to pan around on NexaX to make sure that I have my parts exactly where I want them. If I wanted them in a more specific location, I also have these options right here where I could choose to put them in a specific location on the platform. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue to save this because this part can be printed out without any supports. I'm just going to print it directly on the build platform. So when I go to save a job, what I would do is I would click on this very last option right here above Send to Printer, and I would select Save Job. And from here, I would go ahead and enter in whatever name I want to give to the file. And what that's going to do is it's going to take me to a file that I create. So this is what we call an NXA package. So the NXA package creates a folder and it creates a file called an NXA. So the reason why NexaX is our proprietary software is because our printers only read NXA files. So once you save a job, the software is going to go ahead and create all of the sliced images for your part. It's going to generate this NXA file, which I can go ahead and move over to my USB drive, which I've already moved it over earlier today. And then I'm also going to get this data folder. So in this data folder, I'm able to see a preview of my parts so that I can see what they're going to look like. And I'm also going to get this file right here called an NXS. So the NXS is a scene file. And if you see over here in our little save menu, we also have this little option called save scene. So essentially what the scene is, it's this part right here that we have just manipulated. And what you can do at a later point is if you want to change the orientation, if you want to change supports, or if you want to make any changes to your file at all, you go ahead and open this up in NexaX, and I'll show you how to do that at a later step. And you can manipulate it the way that you want so that you can resave it, get another NXA file, and then print it out. So I actually already have our ZiP X45 natural three-way connector saved to my USB drive. So I'm going to go ahead, eject my USB drive. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start the print, and I will come back to the software and I'll give you guys a little bit more in-depth information about the features that we have on there. So let's go ahead and move over to our printer. Okay, so here is our lovely ZiP. We've got our little UI screen here set to home, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up and show you guys a little bit of the inside. So here we have our build platform. We also have our cartridge right here holding about 1 kilograms worth of material, and we have our vat full of X45 natural material. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring us over to the side right here where I'm going to install my USB. And then I'm going to come over here to our UI, mind my reflection. So I'm going to go ahead and click print. And my print option has 3 options. We have the queue, history, and USB. So the nice thing about our printers is when your printer is connected to the Wi-Fi, you can go ahead and send jobs from NexaX over the network, and they will show up in this area right here. I haven't sent anything over.
You're a bit high. You're a bit high.
A bit high? I apologize about that.
That's better. Thanks.
Awesome. We also have history. So if I had something that I had printed previously, I can go ahead and pull up the history. The history holds up to 20 gigabytes of memory, and I can reprint things that I printed out in the past. And then we have our lovely USB option, which we're going to be using today. And I'm going to go ahead and select our ZiP X45 natural 3-way connectors. And so right now it's just going to load the job. And once the job is loaded, it's going to give me a preview image as well as a little bit of information about our parts, such as the print time, the amount of material that's going to be used. And it's also going to go ahead and let me know which material is being used.
Yeah, and I think that the queue and the history are really nice features that we actually don't really talk about that much because we're so focused on the throughput and everything of our printers. But from a usability standpoint, being able to have a whole team that can drop their prints in the queue, and you're going to see this print takes like 13 minutes or something. I mean, you could have like 10 team members do print jobs within one day with one ZiP, which is pretty mind-blowing. Usually if you had that many team members using a printer, I mean, the last person in the queue might be waiting a few days, maybe a week to get their job done. So
very true. And the nice thing about our printers is thankfully they don't have to wait super long for their prints, because as you could see right here, this print is only going to take us 12 minutes. And it's also only going to use about 15 milliliters of material, which is pretty nice. So we're just going to go ahead and select print now. And the printer is going to go ahead and take you to what we call our pre-print checklist. And so this is just going to go ahead and take you through a couple of things, check off so that we can ensure that your print is going to come out perfectly. So it's going to ask you to confirm that the build plate and the bat are free from any printed fragments. It's also going to ask to please confirm the part volume does not exceed the maximum bat volume. And then it's also going to make sure to confirm that the build plate is inserted, which it is. So we're going to go ahead and click confirm, and it's going to prepare to print. And there it goes. So that's our print going. So while that's printing out, I'm just going to bring our camera right back over here.
And I did want to mention Jasmine threw 5 connectors on there. You could actually fill that entire build plate, and because of the way the technology works, where the entire layer is printed kind of through this LCD projection, you won't actually increase your print time for adding more, on the X and Y axis. So it's a really cool benefit of this technology.
Yes, and I'll also be showing you in the NexaX software how to create a full build volume so that you can print as many as you can. And like Sean mentioned, you won't be losing any time. It's still going to take the same amount of time to print all of those parts out. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen in NexaX. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and start from the beginning. If I can click on this little X button, which I cannot. The little thing is getting in the way. No worries. So here we have our job settings. So whenever you open up a new folder or a new tab in NexaX, what it's going to do is it's going to pull up this job settings menu. And so this is where you're going to go ahead and select your printer. If you have more than one printer, or if you if you have a XiP, an NX series, and an NXD series, you'd be able to select which one you want from here. So we're working with the XiP today, which is why I went ahead and selected XiP. You also have access to all of our validated materials. So we've got quite a lengthy list on our XiP printer. We have about 20 materials ranging from anything that's rapid prototyping to final use parts. We also on our software offer an open source where you could take materials from other companies and other printers, and you can customize the settings for it so that you can use those materials on our printers. And what you would do is you would customize your settings using this tab right here, where you could go ahead and you could change the layer thickness, the base layers, and pretty much manipulate everything that you need to in order to ensure that material prints out fine on our printer. And you would save that as a profile. So this is an additional feature, and it costs about I believe $1,200 a year. Sean, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's around there. So it is a subscription model. And yeah, if you're working a lot with kind of custom resins, some companies that really need something specific for manufacturing, especially, will want to get this for sure.
And so if you have a custom profile that you wanted to use, you'd also be able to find that here once you've saved it. We also have our printer properties, so you can choose the layer height that you want to be printing at. We also have a large solder part enhancement feature, which pretty much, if you select this because you're working with a larger part that tends to warp or not adhere to the build plate as well, you could select this and it's going to tell the printer to slow motor movements in certain areas. And it's also going to double cure your part so that it ensures that it's not warping. We also have an option called adaptive speed control, which essentially the printer takes into account the geometry and the cross section of the parts that you're printing out and will slow the motor movement so that it's ensuring the part comes out without warpage or without delaminating. So it's a little bit like a smart AI feature. You also have an advanced settings tab right here where you can manipulate the base layers, wait time, base exposure, and normal exposure. So manipulating the base layers on our printers get cured at a higher exposure time to ensure that they stick to the build plate. So you could always change the number of base layers to change which layers or the amount of layers that get exposed at a higher time. We also have wait times, and pretty much wait times are times to allow fresh resin to fall beneath the part whenever the z-axis rises up. And we also have base exposure. So base exposure is just how long the first couple layers that we mentioned right back here are exposing for, and then normal exposure, which is the amount of overall exposure happening on the part. So once you're satisfied with all of the settings that you have here, you could click apply, and then from there, you would import your model. So when you import, you have a couple of options. You could import your STL file, you can load a scene, which, as I mentioned earlier, a scene is the build file that you were working on previously that you could then bring back in so that it comes back to the same spot, and then you can manipulate it whichever way you'd like. If you wanted to change settings or supports, if you wanted to change orientations, you could go ahead and pull this back up, and then you can manipulate it the way you'd like. You can also import an NXA file. The NXA file will bring up an isometric preview so that you could see what your build looked like, and then you could get a little bit more information, such as what printer it was printed on, the material, the profile, and the layer thickness. Unfortunately, the NXA you cannot manipulate. So if you wanted to do that, you would load your scene. And if you also work with Magix, we do have an import Magix folder that you're able to use. That one is also a subscription. So let me go ahead and open up. Let's open up a different file this time. Let's open up a back clip. So this was actually a part that I designed in CAD because I wanted to keep track of what materials I was putting in my back visually. And so I went ahead and made this little part in Fusion 360. And as you can see here, I have a couple of features on this part. So I've got hole, I've got a couple of angles on here. So these angles are actually 45-degree angles. So I can actually print this part without needing any supports. But if I wanted to generate supports, what I would do is I would come over here to our support tab, and I would be able to auto-generate supports to this part. We have a couple of options here. We've got strength and density. Essentially what strength is it's the contact tip width. So if I wanted to have stronger supports, I could choose for high strength supports. If I wanted something to break off easily, I could also use low strength supports. We also have an option for density. So if I wanted a super dense amount of supports on my part, I would go ahead and choose high density. If I wanted a good amount, medium, and if I wanted very minimal supports, I could choose low. Our default settings are set to work with our resins as the validated workflow. So if I wanted to just go with default, all I would do is put auto generate supports, and then it would go ahead and generate supports on here. And if I had some supports, let's say that I wanted to manually input, I also have this edit option where I can click on certain spots of my part to add supports. And then I can also change the contact thickness. So the point at which my support is touching my part, I can manipulate that. I can also remove supports that I don't want. So we also have a brush tool removal, and it brings up this little brush right here that I could then use to brush away any supports that were previously generated. So I'm just going to go ahead and cancel out that. So sometimes supports are really good for, keeping your part supported while it's printing out. Sometimes you might need something a little more sturdier to, for example, keep parts from warping. As we know, 3D printing, warping is sometimes an issue. So we also have this feature right here called cones. So cones are essentially very large supports you can manipulate the tip radius and the bottom radius to get the ideal cone that you want. And these are really ideal for warpage. So if you have a part that is prone to kind of curling up because it's square and it's not adhering properly while it's still on supports, you could put a cone in that area and it'll help keep the part from curling up. Can go ahead and move that. So these are our supports. And if you wanted to manipulate them as well, we have support settings where you could change the contact tip width, the inner point influence, the edge point influence, pretty much any part of the supports, the lattice structure, the way that it is reaching into the actual part itself, the amount of distance it has from the build plate. You could change that in these settings right here. And then you could even save your settings so that if you find that a certain combination of settings has been working for you, you could save that profile and then you can always use that and you can come back to it. Once you've saved, yes.
Sorry, Jasmine, I was just gonna say, so there are a ton of settings. I think just as maybe not an advanced user myself, do you have to like go through and do all these settings or
Oh no, yeah,
like,
not at all. So our default settings are very ideal for most parts. It's more if you yourself know that you want to have a specific type of lattice structure, for example, or if you mostly want a specific type of lattice structure, then you could go ahead and manipulate these. But this is very optional and it's really only if you want to play around with it. Our default strain support settings and density support settings are extremely ideal for all parts or most parts. And then you can also manipulate these as well so that they're high and low, depending on what it is that the results that you're getting from your prints. Okay, so my battery is running low. I apologize for that. I will be back in a couple of minutes once I have that plugged in. Again, really apologize for that. I'll be right back.
Cool. No problem. I actually did notice that on your screen, so I was gonna say something, but yeah, I think my takeaways, and I've actually only been at Nexa 3D since May, so still relatively new. But I have used a lot of different 3D slicing softwares, and I would say this one I've been extremely impressed with, NexaX. Even the free version, you can do a lot of those, those custom support features, all that kind of stuff, brushing away supports, adding supports, and even just like those tool tips where you can see like a visual of what it's doing with an explainer. Like, I think that's pretty easy to just like brush up as standard, but it's actually not really at all at least from what I've seen, and there's, like Jasmine said, it's extremely automated. If you just want to, start a print in like 3 clicks, you can auto orient, auto support, hit print, and you're done. Or if you're a super advanced user and you feel comfortable really dialing in like other settings, you can do that too. So really just the best of both worlds, no matter what level of user you are. Did see some questions come in. Somebody asked if this was strictly a subscription model. This is not. For XiP, there are 2 versions. There's the basic version and there's the subscription version, which is called NexaX Pro. NexaX Basic, the free version, it actually has most of these features that you've seen. It really comes, I think Pro really comes into play when you're working more with like Magix, or you're working more with like custom material profiles and stuff like that. So real power users will want to get that Pro version. But even when you get started, you can just download the basic version and be up and running in no time. So that's really nice. Let's see what else. There are a bunch of questions, and shout out to Nina, my boss, who is on here answering those like a champ. Appreciate that, and apologies if you already answered some of these, but sometimes it's good to answer them live in case people have that same question too. Do the cartridges have a chip? So I think we're gonna show you guys that close up. They do have a chip, and it really allows you to kind of have that smart ecosystem. So the printer knows what material is loaded, and it can kind of communicate that back to the software. And it's connected also to the vat. So the vat, if maybe we'll go through the changing resin, but it's actually pretty easy. You can take the cartridge out, take the vat out, and then obviously if you still have resin in that vat and that cartridge, you're going to want to like store those together and make sure that when you put that vat back in, that actually can also keep track of what material it has in it, what material, so you can keep those two together. And it's got, smart filling mechanism on it. So it's going to keep it topped off in the vat while you're printing. You don't have to like run out of resin and pause your print and pour more in there, which is a nice feature too. So, but that said, even with the chip in the cartridges, we do have like what we call a custom resin cartridge that can be filled with a third-party resin. So you can, again, use those custom material profiles and kind of mix and match. So you're not locked down to just our validated resins, even though, like Jasmine said, we do have like 20 or something now. But you can also use custom resins too. And it looks like Jasmine's back.
Yes, so sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
Nice thing about laptops, they die sometimes. Okay, so thank you guys so much for waiting, and thank you, Sean and Nina, for answering a bunch of those questions. All right, so let's go ahead and continue through this. So we went over our support settings, and yes, again, there's a lot of options here. One of the really nice things about our software is that it's super open. We offer the open source, and we have a bunch of different options. And essentially it's so that customers are able to manipulate their parts and pretty much do whatever it is that they need to do in order to get the parts that they need out. So,
sorry, quick note for those of you who may have noticed, I think while Jasmine was running around, the part did finish behind her. So just keep that in mind. It is already done. So yeah, I think that was about 13 minutes. Like we said, it was about 13 minutes. So I'll let you finish doing the software side, then maybe we'll go take a look at the how the part came out.
Yes. So there's actually not too many parts left for the software. So I'll just quickly run through this. We have an edit tool as well. So sometimes when we import our meshes or export them from CAD, sometimes the mesh becomes a little janky, for lack of better words. And so what we have in our software here is a repair tool, which pretty much helps to repair the mesh so that it prints out properly. We also offer a hollow tool as well as a perforation tool. Perforation tool is super ideal for parts that could potentially cup. Essentially what cupping is, it's when you have a geometry that allows resin to get trapped while printing. And so we have a perforation tool for that so that you can avoid your part from being subjected to that phenomenon that occurs in resin printing. And then we also have a hollow tool. So if you have a solid part that you wanted to hollow out, we do have that option here as well. And then Sean mentioned earlier with our three-way connectors, which are done printing right behind us, I could have printed out a full build of that. And the way that I would do that is I would pretty much use this array duplicate selection. And so what I could do is I could go ahead and take my part, and I could pretty much just on the X and on the Y, I could create as many parts as the build platform is going to allow for, and I can space them out as needed. And from here, I could create a whole array and I could duplicate it, and I know that they're going to be evenly spaced and whatnot. So this is a very useful tool for whenever you want to do full builds of the same parts, such as three-way connectors that we are printing out. We also have a little analysis tool right here, which allows us to measure certain points on our parts. So we do have inner, outer, and 2 points. So if you wanted to measure diameters or certain thicknesses, just to make sure that you are aware of the size of the part that you're printing out, we do have this option here as well. So I'm going to go over one last thing really quickly before I go ahead and show you guys the part that has completed behind us, and that is the Manage Printers tab. So the Manage Printer tab is really ideal for when you have a lot of XiP printers, such as a XiP farm where you have about 5 to 6 printers, and you want to kind of keep an eye on all of them. So when you go to your Manage Printers tabs, if I close out of this, I have a lot of printers connected right now. And the nice thing about it is it allows me to see what each of those printers that I've connected over Wi-Fi are doing. So I can actually go ahead and see over here that on one of my printers, I'm printing out Key Model Ultra Teeth. And it's going to tell me the percentage of the job being completed, how much time is remaining, the slice number it's on. And if I click on it, it'll even give me a little bit more information about it, such as the part volume, the type of resin I'm using, the overall print time, and then a little bit about the exposure and the base layers. So this is a really great way for me to keep track of the different types of printers that I'm working with. And it'll even let me know if I have printers that are available for me to use. This is really good in an industrial setting where you kind of have your printers in a separate room and aren't able to keep an eye on them all the time. And so this is also the way that I would send my jobs over to a printer. So if I was to click on this Send to Printer tab right here, I would go ahead and be able to select the jobs that I want, the NXA file, for example. And then once I have it selected, I'll be able to select whatever printer that I have connected so that I can send it over. And then I can go ahead and print it from the queue. And you can do multiple prints that you could send to the queue as well. It doesn't have to be one at a time. So that is our software. If you have any questions about them, I'm more than happy to answer those in the Q&A session. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And I am going to go ahead and show you guys the print that just finished behind me. Sorry for all the rearranging. I had to find the outlets. So things are a little different than what you might remember. All right, so here is our all ready part. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this up. And here we have our 3-way connectors that printed out, and you can see that they look absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I mean, not bad for 13 minutes, 5 parts. I think if like based on the size of those, you could probably fit like, I don't know, 30 parts on there. And
yeah, you could definitely fit a lot more.
Maybe 50. It would still print in 13 minutes, which is the cool part. But yeah.
Yes. So the nice thing about the technology that we use, and let me actually go ahead and move over to a printer that is empty so I could kind of show you a little bit more of the inside. So here's what our printer looks like inside. We have an area for the cartridge to sit. We have our LCD module right here. And then we also have our Z-axis arm. So the reason why we're able to print as fast as we do is, as Sean mentioned, our LSPc technology, otherwise known as lubricant sublayer photo curing. So this LCD module right here, what it's doing is projecting an image of the slice. And so you can add as many parts as you want onto your build platform. And unlike SLA, which uses a laser head to trace the pathway to cure all of those parts of the image, what ours does is it flashes an image so that it cures the entire layer all at once, which is why you're able to print either 5 3-way connectors or 30 3-way connectors in the same amount of time. So this is what the inside of our printer looks like. The outside is an anodized aluminum. So this is a very sturdy, sustainable part, and you know that it's definitely of good quality. If we move over here, we can see our components, which is our vat, membrane, and we also have our spout as well. So these are the components that you mostly will be working with. Our vat and our membrane are extremely easy to install. The vat is also an anodized aluminum that has been machined. And essentially what you would do is you would have this flipped over. You can see right here that this has some electromagnets on it. And these magnets are the way that our, I apologize for the camera. These magnets are the way that our bats connect to the printer. So the way to install the membrane is pretty much what you do is we have a little gasket on here, and the gasket just sits right into the vat, such as so. And you would just push this down, and we have these little latches right here on the sides that go ahead and clip our membrane into place. So it's super easy to install. It takes about 30 seconds. And right here, this area right here, we call the no touch zone because this is the self-lubricated part of the membrane. And this paired with our LCD module is what allows it to print as fast as it does because it really helps out with those kill forces that you have to deal with whenever you print with resin. So once you have this installed, and right now, unfortunately, since I'm only using one hand, I won't be able to install it, but I can show you on this other side right here. So we have these little Mickey Mouse ears, and we have this little spout right here. This spout is also super easy to install. All you do is you just click it right into place with these little latches on the side. And this spout allows the cartridge bottle to sit on top of it and flow resin into the vat. And this ensures that your vat is always full whenever you're printing out. If you feel that you've run out of material in your cartridge, you're always able to take it out and refill it. We do send a funnel with our printers so that you're able to continuously keep reusing the same cartridge. So real quick, and I believe Sean and Nina did mention this, but right here, you can see a little white tag on the back of our bats. So that tag right there is called an Nfc tag, and that registers the vat to a specific material when you're using a specific cartridge. So let me go ahead and show you our cartridge. So this right here is Key Model Ultra. If I turn it around, you're gonna see the same Nfc tag right here. So this Nfc tag registers this cartridge for Key Model Ultra. So if I was to install my vat inside of the printer, it's going to go ahead and read the vat as just a NA. So it doesn't have anything registered to just yet. When I install my cartridge, the vat is then going to be able to read the Nfc tag on the cartridge, and it's going to let the printer know that that vat also is going to be holding Key Model Ultra material. So I can actually even show you right here on our printer that we've already printed out. So your part is all ready. Was our print successful? Yes, it was. So if I was to go to settings right here, and I go to printer status, I have this option right here that shows me the cartridge and the vat. So right now inside, I have X45 natural material in my cartridge, as well as in my vat. And it's also showing me the amount of layers printed on my vat. So let's say that I had a vat that I cleaned out, registered to X45 natural, but now I wanted to use Key Model Ultra. The nice thing about our printers is you can still use the vat and you can use it for different materials. Our printer always has a warning that shows up, letting you know if materials don't match for whatever reason. It's a really great way to catch if you've accidentally used the wrong cartridge on the wrong vat, or if you want to use a vat on a cartridge that is a completely different material. So nice way to save on having to get extra vats. So let me go ahead and show you a little bit about the UI, mostly the settings. So we have our print and our setting options here. We also have the little icons below so that you can have little shortcuts. So if I go to settings, we have a lot of different options here. We have our printer status that I showed you, connections for Wi-Fi and Ethernet, maintenance, which allows you to pretty much service the printer by yourself in the event that something happens. Let's say that you need to align your build plate. Well, if you needed to do that, this option right here is going to take you through all of the steps, step by step, so that you're able to do it. We also have a resin back cleaning. So if you had a failed print, or if you feel that there might be some fragments or contamination in your vat, you'd be able to go to this option right here. And when you go through the entire process step by step, the printer is going to go ahead and cure an entire layer of material so that you could go ahead and peel it off with a clean tool that we provide with the printer, so that your vat remains fragment free and also keeps your prints from failing and helps you with more successful prints. We also have manual build plate movement. If you have logs that you want to save, it also takes you through the steps of how to remove and replace your vats, as well as the LCD and a level sensor calibration. So the nice thing about the level sensor calibration is what that does is it allows your printer to know if there's enough material in your vats. Once your material is starting to run low, the printer will notify you before you begin a print so that you could go ahead and refill your cartridge, and then your print will go ahead and begin. So it's a nice little safe key. So that is our settings for maintenance. We also have our system where you can go ahead, reboot, update, register your printer. When you first get your printer, you will go through an onboarding process, but if you forgot any of the steps or wanted to review them, we have a whole table of contents right here that you'd be able to go ahead and go through so that you could review that information. You also have factory reset as well as an about, but it'll tell you information about your printer, a little bit of information about support and how to contact us here at NexaX 3D, as well as legal information. And a neat little feature that we have is this little light source right here. And so if I was to click it, I'd be able to see inside my printer, which is really nice because sometimes when your printer is printing out, you want to kind of see what's going on. You click on that light and you'd be able to see what your printer is doing, and you don't have to worry about turning it off because it turns off on its own after 30 seconds. So let me go ahead and put our camera back.
Cool. Nicely done, Jasmine. I think we covered just about everything. There are a ton of questions to get through. So yeah, I guess I would ask, are you ready to do some Q&A?
Yes, let's go through the Q&A.
Sweet. All right. Let me see this back up here. Okay, cool. So I will start from the top. Where can I go to request parts? Somebody asked. I think I will take a stab at that. You can reach out to our sales team. The benchmarking, that X Factor, it's really for people who are interested in purchasing the technology and seeing what it can do and if it can do their application. So contact our sales team. You can go to our website, or I dropped a link in the chat if you want to check out the 60-day money back guarantee XiP promo and get in touch that way. And somebody will reach out. When I have an STL print file as a point cloud, could it be used for sending it to Nexa 3D to the printer?
So as of now, we do not have a connection between the cloud and Nexa 3D or for NexaX. That is actually a question that we have gotten quite often. But unfortunately, right now, that's not a feature that we offer.
Gotcha. All right. Is there a Magix build processor built for XiP currently or planned for the future?
So I'm assuming that the Magix build processor that you're referring to is for the Magix program. We do have two types of subscriptions that you can use if you wanted to use Magix for XiP, but that is a separate purchase.
Cool.
And it is something that is available right now.
All right. Clement was asking, was the side located USB port determined by ergonomic study or engineering considerations? I don't know if you know the answer.
Yeah, that's a That's a very interesting question. I
It
would
is.
say, I think in an earlier version of the printer, the USB was located in the back. And I think one of the things about USBs being located on the backs of printers is that whenever you have to go and push them up against a wall or anything, you can't really reach it as well. So I think it was more an engineering consideration just because easy access and also gives you a little bit more space to play with rather than putting it somewhere else.
Also keeps the front nice and clean. You get a nice smooth front, which I like a lot. Do you provide density information for all resins? I noticed you sell the cartridge in kilograms, but the UI displays print volume in milliliters.
So we do have a safety data sheet as well as a technical data sheet online. You can find it at nexax.com/materials. And pretty much on there, you'd be able to find all the information about our materials, including any such as tensile strength, modules, or density information.
Cool. Next question, for open platform, how are the resin bottles filled, written to the printer to recognize what material is inserted?
So as of right now, for custom materials that you want to use, what you would do is you would request a custom bottle on the NexaX store, and the NFC tag is going to just read custom. Unfortunately, there's no way right now to actually write anything on the NFC tag so that it's registering a specific type of material. But what we recommend is to just label your bottle as well as your bag to make sure that you're not cross-contaminating any other types of materials.
And on that note, it's funny you should ask that, because in 2 weeks' time, I will be hosting a webinar with Taylor Hardy from Elk 3D, who is doing all kinds of third-party material printing on XiP. So if you're interested in learning more about that process, go ahead and scan the QR code, register for that webinar. It's going to be on October 27th. So be sure and join us. All right. Next question. Yeah, we've got a couple more minutes. We'll copy this webinar, be emailed to us. Absolutely. We'll send it out to all attendees and just registrants in general. Let's see, will the changes to the Lattice stay saved in NexaX software for subsequent prints?
So if you wanted to change the lattice structure of your supports, or if you wanted to change anything about your supports in general, we do have that option where you're able to save that entire profile. So when you open up a new NexaX tab, import a different model, if you wanted to use those same supports again, all you would have to do is go up to the top of your support settings and just select that profile that you saved, and you'd be able to use it again.
Cool. Can you reuse resin in the vat if you decide to change resins, or does the cartridge dispense an appropriate amount of resin to minimize waste?
So the cartridge is always dispensing the max amount of material into the vat. So it's all physics based. The cartridge dispenses material into the vat until the vat reaches its maximum, and then it creates a seal with the bottom of the spout. And so it's always going to be kept at the max level. And I believe the vat holds about 200 milliliters of material, and you are able to reuse it. Let's say you want to switch out the material in your vat. The vat actually has a little spout on it so that you're able to squeegee out whatever remaining materials you want. We recommend filtering it with a 100 micron filter into the cartridge, and then you'd be able to reuse it again.
Cool. Next question. Can you elaborate on post-processing? Is it always necessary, and what steps are needed after a print is finished, curing, cleaning, etc.? I would like to see a familiar webinar on post-process. We can probably do that, but maybe Jasmine can give a little insight too.
Yes. So the post-processing for our materials, they are relatively the same across the board. Essentially for the XiP, we do offer a 2-in-1 unit called the wash and cure unit. And so what we do is in a bucket, we fill it with cleaning solutions such as X-Clean. You can also use IPA, and we do a 2-minute wash on the build plate so that your build plate also gets cleaned. And then we take the parts off and wash those parts again for an additional 2 minutes. And then you can either water rinse them or wash them off in IPA if you want a higher evaporation or a faster evaporation, so it dries faster. It's usually ideal for a high volume throughput. From there, what you're going to do is you're going to allow your parts to go ahead and dry. And once your parts are dry, you will go ahead and cure them. All of the information for how long to wash the parts for, as well as how long to cure them, are available on the technical data sheets online at NexaX.com.
Cool. And with that, I think we are out of time. So I want to thank everybody for joining and tuning in today. So many great questions. If we didn't get to yours live, hopefully we can follow up with you, or even better, you can reach out to one of our reps and they can answer all of your questions. They can walk through your specific application, your parts. Maybe you can get a benchmark printed, you can get your ROI calculated, your cost of ownership, all that good stuff that goes into buying one of these professional 3D printers. Big thank you, Jasmine, for joining me. Awesome job.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thanks for also, putting up with my little technical little battery running out of power.
Hey, that's the best thing about live webinars. You never know what's going to happen.
The unpredictableness of it.
Exactly.
It's an adventure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
So yeah, and if you guys have any more questions just about the technology, the printers, you can go to nexa3d.com. A lot of information on there about both our our resin-based LSPc printers and also our QLS powder-based printers. So check it out. And I guess hopefully I'll see a lot of you in 2 weeks when we do that third-party 3D printing webinar. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.